Everyone, in today's video I'm going to be covering another build, this time for one of my other favorite characters in the game, Lady Morgawse. Lady Morgawse is an Old Faith Tyrant Sage that you unlock during Act 2, and she is actually exclusive with Merlin. As you progress through the story, you'll be prompted with a choice to either take Merlin or Morgawse, Merlin being an Old Faith Arcanist. Playing through the game the first time, admittedly, I was super hyped for Merlin, but as I was doing an Old Faith Tyrant run, I figured Morgawse would probably line up better with how I was playing. Turns out, she did, and I do not regret this decision from a gameplay standpoint in the slightest. Morgawse is an extremely effective and powerful offensive debuffing support unit, where she just throws all kinds of statuses on your enemies to just really lock them down and prevent them from doing much of anything. She plays very different from the other sages in the game. Sages typically are a support class that buff your party. Morgawse, on the other hand, supports your party through damaging and debuffing the enemy. Let's move on to how I've built her for my very hard difficulty run. Beginning with essences, I didn't use up all 4 of her essence slots, as you can see. And to be honest, that's really just because I didn't think she needed them. For what I did give her, I gave her Essence of Willpower and Essence of Constitution. This is 50% physical debuff resist and mental debuff resist. I chose these because it will let me skip out on the defensive resistance talents that are offered in her skill tree and let me focus on her other spells. And by having this obscenely high debuff resist, it means there's going to be very little that'll be thrown at her to mitigate her turns, and she can just focus on churning out spell after spell, turn after turn, without hardly any risk at all of slowing her down. Moving on to the gear, as I mentioned in my previous video, this is going to be the most highly variable aspect of building a character from campaign to campaign due to the RNG nature of how gear is acquired. This is just what I've found and what I think works best for this style of aggressive support that I've built for her, and if you find any gear that just offers similar stats to what I'm about to show, it's a step in the right direction if this is a build you want to mirror in your own gameplay. Starting with her armor, the Unseelie Hexmark. As you can see, this has very high armor for a sage piece with 15. This, I think, is very good, especially with 7 of it being unbreakable. This allows her to take a bit more hits with a bit more regularity, as she's going to be going in up close with enemies with some consistency. Additionally, she has immunity to chill, which is useful because it means her own AP cannot get reduced by this status effect, which is very good, but in practice there aren't really many enemies that apply chill, so this doesn't come up that often. And then the additional +1 AP. More AP is always good with any character because it lets them do more stuff. Her weapon, Willowspark Rune, is essentially just an elemental damage spellblade. You can see it applies burning when it strikes an enemy, and this combos off of itself as she will then do extra damage against burning units. There's also extra damage against chilled units, which she will be applying for even more damage. And then the big part here is the plus 15% damage for the next melee attack for each spell cast since the last melee attack. She's going to be throwing out a lot of spells, so this plus 15% is going to ramp up pretty quick, and she'll be doing a surprising amount of damage in a nice little burst window. Next, her jewelry, the Earthsmith ring. This one doesn't really contribute a whole lot, but I am using this because that plus 24% physical debuff resist, just like I said, making her a bit tankier, but also having plus 9 damage for area attacks. She's going to be throwing out a lot of spells, doing a lot of damage. This just helps accentuate that further. And then having the Earthball skill, while not a huge thing, is pretty nice. It's an extra AoE attack, and it only costs 1 AP. Now here, her manuscript. this is a big one. There's +4 unbreakable armor, so with this plus her armor, most of her armor is just unbreakable, which helps keep her in a fairly healthy, tanky state relative for a Sage. But it also just makes all adjacent enemies chilled, so if any enemies get up in her face, or if she gets up in their face, immediately chilled, their maximum AP is going to be reduced, just further applying those oppressive debuffs. This has the +6 damage against chilled units, stacking with her weapon, so just even more damage she's going to be throwing out. And then the -1 cooldown for ice skills, which is very useful, as she does have a couple of those that I use with pretty high regularity. Now you may be thinking, this +1 cooldown for support skills, that's bad. For most Sages, yes. For her, no. She does not have support skills. She, like I mentioned before, she supports through offense. Looking at her skill tree, this just does not affect her, and that's what I love about her. Last thing before we get to the gameplay, the skills. First, freezing attack. As you can see, it currently has a cooldown of 1 turn. This means she can effectively keep any single enemy permanently frozen. This is crazy. Just a permanent lockdown on an opponent. If it's a huge enemy, elite, or a boss, that's just a huge contribution. A lot of bosses are immune to being outright frozen, but not entirely, so this is still going to be diminishing their AP. We took 2 talents on this, Lasting Cold to apply Chill, and Chill to the Bone to reduce the cooldown by 1. This comboed with this manuscript over here is why this has the cooldown of 1. But we took Lasting Cold so that it applies Chilled on top of Frozen. As I mentioned before, some enemies are immune to Frozen or have resistance to being frozen. So by putting the Chill on top, it's just an extra layer of AP reduction in the event that the enemy will not have their turn skipped outright by being frozen. We took Thunderbolt, took all the talents on it. Basically, we're just increasing its range, increasing its damage, burning through armor better, and turning it into a stun. Having a long-range stun with a good amount of armor break and damage is always going to be useful. Next up, we take Ice Spikes and all of the talents for this ability as well. This is going to be reducing the cost, increasing the damage, applying Chill again, and taking Knockback. Applying Chill, as I've mentioned before, super useful debuff, just locking down and reducing the options for your enemy, and the Knockback is to help alleviate any pressure that she may be suffering or an ally may be suffering. Ice Shield. This is key for her survivability. Again, we're taking all 4 talents, reducing the AP cost by 1, increasing the Ice Plate, so now there are 4 of them, reducing the cooldown by 1, and increasing the duration by 1. Ice Plates will fully negate an incoming hit, so now she's going to be blocking 4 incoming hits, taking no damage at all from it, and it's going to last 4 turns, and its cooldown is going to be shorter than that. So you will be able to cast this back to back and have 100% uptime if enemies aren't burning through those 4 plates faster than she's casting them. Next up here, we have Chain Lightning, just the chef's kiss of her kit, in my opinion. Again, we're taking all of the talents on this ability. This lets it target up to 4 enemies, have its AP cost reduced by 2, have it do an additional 20% damage, and apply Shock. This means you're going to have a ranged damage ability that can hit 4 enemies and apply Shock to those 4 enemies for a relatively cheap cost. Now moving on to the tier 3, we're taking Thunderstorm. We're only taking 1 talent here, Thundershock, so that way we have a large AoE that can just apply shock to a huge amount of enemies. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but like I said, we're mostly just taking this for the debuff. Here I took Wall of Ice, or Ice Wall. This one isn't really essential in my opinion, but it is situationally useful for blocking off enemies and creating a bottleneck. I just took the talents that increased the size of it and the range. as well as being able to freeze enemies if they choose to break it. Here, though, we have Master of Lightning. Very high contribution skill to this build. As you can see, extra damage for her lightning skills, and you're going to be throwing those out a lot, plus extra damage against enemies that are shocked or stunned. Tons of combo potential between Thunderstorm, Chain Lightning, and Thunderbolt. Lightning Shackles. Shock now lasts even longer, even more debuff uptime. Further AP cost reduction, meaning Chain Lightning is actually costing 3. And cooldown reduction. If you kill an enemy with a lightning skill, it just reduces the cooldown so you can get that spell spam going up even faster. Lastly, we have Mysticism, just another cooldown reduction, and Wish of Death for some AP generation when you kill enemies. These cooldown reductions are once per turn, so you won't be able to cast a spell twice in the same turn. But they do stack with each other, so a -2 cooldown is pretty solid. So that was a lot to go over, so let's just jump into the gameplay and show her off. So here we are in the Three Sisters mission. If you saw my Black Knight video, you will recognize this set of enemies. This time around, we're not going to have him going around just killing everything because I want to give Morgawse a chance to really show off her debuff capabilities. So, to open up, you can see we got a lot of enemies coming from different angles here. First off, we have this group of 3 over here on the side, closest to threatening our Morgawse. So we're going to throw down Chain Lightning over here. Put her ice plates up. Step her out one space to kind of draw aggro onto her. She will be closer. And we're going to have Morgana kind of deal with some of these enemies coming from the other sides. Have her put her CCs down.
For my Camelot.
So I'm not sure if you noticed that, but this enemy right here is walking up to her, and as soon as the shield applies, he just stops right in front of her. He's his entire turn just walking, got no attacks in. And that's the kind of stuff we want to do to all of our enemies. So here we can see he's getting up close. We want to move her over here to help support our Black Knight. So, but we don't want to provoke an attack of opportunity, so we're just going to throw in Ice Spikes, get him off us. Throw down a Thunderstorm here. Apply shock to these 2 enemies. Just have her move over here. We're going to reposition our Black Knight. And then just have speed through the rest of our other teammates over here. So again, see this enemy took 1 step. These enemies getting 1 attack in and moving 1 space. This enemy did literally nothing. He just stood there. He did not have enough AP to take a single action. This enemy started outside of her chill aura, so he only had the shock debuff on him, so he managed to get a dash attack in, but as soon as he got there, his turn was over. You can see she is effectively locking down 5 different enemies from varying ranges. Now with these 4 close, these are easily handled by our duo here. So we still have this guy way out over here. We're going to deal with him later, so we're going to drop a Thunderbolt on him. Stun him. We're going to move our Black Knight here in a second to get a better lineup on some attacks, but we don't want him provoking that attack of opportunity. Freezing attack.
Nice move. Haven't got shockwave.
What are we waiting for?
Here you can see our Morgawse, after going through all that, and took a couple hits. She's still looking pretty healthy. Remember, this is on very hard. So, our last guy left over here. We'll just have Morgawse run up on him. Put a freezing attack on him. Just end our turn. Freezing attack again. And you kind of get the what's going on here. We'll just put him out of his misery.
Fresh food for the maggots.
We have a second fight for us, going against the Pict. You can see a group of them starting really close to us, some worms behind us, and a group over here. They're pretty far out, so they're not really concerned for us. So let's go ahead and get Morgawse into position so she can start doing what she does best. Throw down a thunderstorm, apply some shock. Let's get her ice shield up. And let's just move her into position. Have the rest of our teammates kind of deal with these worms flanking behind us.
Which one shall I take?
Though, I could take this opportunity to show what I'm doing over here to these two earthworms. We're applying chill and shock through the combination efforts of Mordred and Morgana, locking them down with debuffs. This takes two characters to do this. Meanwhile, we have Morgawse over here able to do that all in her lonesome, just really showing the crazy amount of debuff support that she has.
For my Camelot.
Go ahead and move you over here. Morgana.
So, saw that? This guy here used his invulnerability ability and just stood there. This guy walked up, entered into Morgawse's aura, dead in his tracks. This guy here, he didn't do anything. He just stood there. Alright, so now that we have this other group coming in, let's go ahead and start putting some debuffs on them. Can't quite reach the archer, so we'll just divert the chain lightning back over this way. Reapply our shock debuff on them. Let's go ahead and just freeze you. And then just leave the rest of this up to my fellow teammates.
I can take them all. Alright, you are not dead yet. Who is next? Die already.
Alright. And one last thing, we're going to have Morgawse pop off. You can see she's generated a bit more AP from those kills. So now she has enough for a Thunderbolt. Going to drop this on him. Lock him down. Pass our turn. You can see those three enemies that she had next to her. Did nothing because he was frozen. Did nothing because of the debuffs. And he took a single step. We're going to freeze you this time. Put some ice spikes on you. And just take a swing at you.
Power and glory.
Alright, and we're just going to pass turns so we can show off one last time just how these three enemies just continue to be locked down by Morgawse. All three of them, again, did absolutely nothing. So with that, let's go ahead and wrap up.
What?
And here the Black Knight just comes in and sweeps him up for her. One last fight for this video, showing off her CC capability on a singular boss type enemy who's going to be having resistances to these debuffs she's throwing out. Show how effective she still can be due to the stacking nature of these abilities, even if they are resistant. So, starting off, just gonna have a run on up. Boom, chill affected. Chain lightning. Get shock on there. And then of course put on an ice shield. just to keep her safe.
Fire and steel.
Just gonna debuff him here. And just to show off how safe she is, I'm just gonna leave her by herself. See what happens. He does nothing. So then, follow-up turn, freeze. Does nothing yet again. If we don't want to freeze him, stun him. Nothing. And, I mean, we could just chain CC with this freezing attack here. As you can see, it's up every single turn. So she can effectively 1v1 this guy. Won't be the fastest process, but she will come out completely hitless. But we don't want to take that long, so let's go ahead and just wrap this up nice and quick.
Power and glory.
So there you have it, my Lady Morgawse showcase slash build guide. As you can see, she is just a debuffing queen. Can just lay down debuff after debuff, turn after turn, without any issue, and just completely lock down 3-4 enemies at a time to the point where they will literally just stand there and do nothing. They're not frozen, they're not knocked down, they're not stunned, they're just debuffed and can't do anything about it. In the case of single target enemies against boss types or mini boss types, she can effectively 1v1 them, as they will never get a chance to have a turn. Some of this being enabled by just the super cheesable freezing attack, even if this is a cooldown 2. I'm not sure if you saw, but the Thunderbolt also with a cooldown of 2, I mean, you can just alternate between stun, freeze. It's the same thing. If you get against some act bosses, they're probably going to have much higher resistances, so this will be less effective and not allow you to skip their turns, but you will heavily mitigate their turns and the amount of actions they're going to be taking. I hope you enjoyed the video, learned something, maybe want to duplicate this in your own run, or just enjoyed watching her completely ridicule and laugh in the faces of multiple enemies. Thanks for watching.